student, I'm Mr. Liang. So in this video, we are going to talk about worksheet number 4. So the main focus will be the assimilation. So for assimilation is a bit difficult, more difficult than the topic of digestion or absorption, because at least you can still see the villi, at least you can still see the stomach, the esophagus, the liver, the pancreas, okay? But now it's just all the chemical reaction happening in our human body, okay, for the metabolism. So that's why it may be a bit not that easier, okay, for us, okay, to visualize it, okay. So that's why I introduce you the food logic, okay. These 3 steps concepts, okay, can help us to understand or to construct the knowledge of assimilation, okay. So for this table, it's talking about the food substance, okay. I mainly focus on glucose, amino acid, and fats first, okay. But for the other food substance, for example, the iron, any other vitamins, okay, so you can refer to the notes, but at least, okay, you can follow the food logic, okay, to understand the whole concept. So for the second column, for the main function, actually it will not be my focus, because it's just the function of the glucose, or for releasing energy, amino acid to build the protein and then make enzyme, antibodies, something like this for growth and repair, and the fats used to make the cell membrane and also make the hormones, something like this. So that's something we learned before, okay, the basic function of the food substance, okay. But now I will focus on the third column, the fate of excess, okay. So it will follow the food logic, okay. And for the whole logic, okay, actually it the origin, okay, is a simple belief, okay. So imagine in the past, okay, mainly we depends on hunting, okay, maybe hunting the rabbit, maybe hunting the tiger, lion. So that's why before we have agriculture, okay, we depends on hunting to gather food, okay. So that's why it means that today we have food, okay, but what will be my next meal? I don't know. Maybe tomorrow, maybe 5 days later, or maybe 2 weeks later, okay. So that's why for our body, for our human body, we need to know that if we intake excess food substance, okay, we shall not waste it, we shall not remove it so easily. We try to keep it, we try, okay, to store it in the body, okay? So that's why for the food intake, okay, after we intake it, okay, if it is in an excess amount, so we should storage it, okay, for the storage. And after that, if the storage is limited, okay, and then we go to the maximum storage capacity. So that's why we may need to convert it to the other form, okay. So that's why we have the conversion, okay. So I will use glucose, amino acid, and fat, okay, to demonstrate the logic once for you to have a better understanding. So for the glucose, if we intake too much, so actually for the second step, we intake too much glucose, and the second step is, can you store it in your body? Yes, we can. We can store the glucose in the form of glycogen in the liver, in the muscles, okay. So that's how we can store the carbohydrates in our body, okay. And then for the storage, the next step will be conversion, okay. So because the storage in liver, in muscle, okay, there will be upper limit. So that's why if we reach the upper limit, we need to convert the excess glucose, excess carbohydrates to the other form. So that's the conversion. We may convert the glucose into fat for further storage. So for the fat storage under skin or surround the internal organ, okay, actually is unlimited, okay. Remember in the past, okay, today we have meal, but for the next meal I don't know when. So that's why for our body, okay, really want to store everything, and fat is a very good thing. Okay, so beautiful thing for people. Okay, but now of course it's not that good because we may suffer from obesity, diabetes, okay, something like this, overweight, okay, situation, health problem. Okay, and for the second one, okay, I talk about fat. Okay, if we intake excess fat, okay, food intake excess, so can you store it? Sure, why not? Okay, we store fat, okay, under skin, surround the internal organ, okay, so that's for the fat. And what about for the amino acid? For the amino acid is that if we intake excess amount of amino acid, excess food intake, so what will the next step? Store? Can you store excess protein or excess amino acid? Sorry, we cannot. So that's why we need to do the first step, conversion. So the excess amino acid will be carried to the liver, and for the liver, it will break down the excess amino acid into urea, and part of it will become carbohydrates. Okay, so that's why for the urea, it will be removed in the urine, and part of the amino acid will be converted into carbohydrates and also stored in our body, maybe in glycogen form or in fat form. Okay, so that's why even we intake a lot of amino acid. Okay, so somehow although we shall not store amino acid itself, okay, we shall store carbohydrate, okay, in a indirect way. Okay, so that's for the food intake, excess food intake. Okay, second step, storage and then conversion. But okay, for the logic, okay, how beautiful is it? Because we can reverse the concept. Okay, so in the previous minutes, okay, I talk about excess amount. So what about we do not intake enough amount of that food? That means we do not intake sufficient amount of glucose, not sufficient amount of fat, something like this. Okay, so we can how can we obtain the sufficient amount? Okay, even we cannot eat it, because okay, once we do not have sufficient food intake, we can ask our body, did you store anything before? Oh yeah, sure, I store some glycogen for you in the liver, in the muscle. Okay, so we can use it. So we can break down the glycogen to release the glucose to the blood. Okay, so that's why we can use the storage. Okay, but what if the glycogen, okay, because the storage of glycogen, okay, it has upper limit, so that means the glycogen can be used up. So that's why we need to do the third step, okay, releasing energy when there is a shortage of carbohydrates. Okay, conversion. If there is no not sufficient amount of glucose, we need to convert the fat to release energy for ourselves. Okay, so that's why it's also a type of conversion. But I'm not talking about from fat to glucose. I'm talking about if we cannot use glucose to release sufficient energy, okay, we can use fat as the second energy source, okay, or energy storage. Okay, because you remember that fat is the main energy storage in our body. Okay, and what if the fat is also consumed, is used up? So we need to break down our muscle to release the protein. Okay, and then if we have excess protein or excess amino acid, okay, it can be also converted into glucose and then release energy for us. So you can see that our body, okay, we really need energy. Okay, if we have excess energy, we store it, and if we do not have enough amount of energy, we need to break down something to get enough energy afterwards. Okay, so that's why that's the food logic. No matter we eat too much or we eat too less, okay, this logic still works. So I hope you can practice this logic, okay, to understand how can our body so-called to assimilate, to uptake, and how can we use the food substance in our human body. So we take a look at the question. So in this question, we mainly focus on the absorption of different food substance in the small intestine and the large intestine after a normal meal. So you can read the table and then especially be aware of the amount of the absorption is graded by the number of the positive sign. Okay, so much, normal, little, or even none, okay, is absorbed. So that's for the general picture for this table. So for part A is talking about which substance is water and states your reason. And the second one is that other than normal meal, so suggest one major source of the absorbed water. So for part A1 is not that difficult because we know that water is already very small and simple molecules. So that's why it's readily absorbed, okay, in our alimentary canal. So that's why no matter in esophagus, stomach, duodenum, ileum, or even the large intestine, okay, it can be absorbed. So refer to the table so you can see that only food substance B, okay, is absorbed in both small intestine and large intestine, okay, something like this. And at least for example for food substance A, it can only be absorbed in small intestine and there will be no absorption in large intestine. Why? Because probably is because the food substance A is completely absorbed in the small intestine. So after that there will be no absorption in large intestine, okay, so something like this. So that's why for part A1, okay, normally, okay, so you can think about the answer very easily. And other than the meal, okay, by eating, by drinking, okay, any major source of the absorbed water, okay, how can we still absorb the water, okay, from the digestive food, but that water is not coming from the water, the drinking water or the water content in the food, okay? So the answer is that for A1, okay, it should be food substance B, and then the reason is that it is the only food substance that can be absorbed in both large and small intestines. So and then for the second one is that the digestive juice. Apart from the water uptaken from the food or the drinking water, okay, so the digestive juice also contains water, and after they finish their mission, okay, maybe the saliva, maybe the gastric juice, maybe the pancreatic juice, okay, it also contains water, right? So that's why we also need to absorb this water back to our body, otherwise what a waste. And then for part B, what is substance C? Describe and explain what happened to food substance C in the small and large intestine. And actually you can see that according to the table, no matter in small intestine and the large intestine, the number is or the sign is 0. That means it cannot be absorbed at all, okay, no matter in small and large intestine. So the hint is that why? Okay, you need to think about why it is not absorbed in both small and large intestine. And then refer to the food substance you learned before, the 7 types of food substance. Which type actually we cannot absorb in our digestive system, okay? And also you can recall the nutrition process: ingestion, digestion, absorption, assimilation, and also the egestion. Recall what I mentioned before in worksheet number 1. If something cannot be digested, it will not be absorbed, and it will not be assimilated as well, okay? And it will be egested finally. So actually, I think that you know the answer. What is C? Dietary fibers. And what happened, okay? What happening is that no absorption occurred in both large and small intestine, and the reason is because the fiber, it just cannot be digested by human enzymes. So that's why for the human body, for the human digestive system, we cannot absorb it at all, okay? So you may ask, oh, so what about the case for the cows, for the horses? Okay, because in their digestive system, they have some bacteria, and that bacteria, they can produce the enzyme to digest the dietary fiber. So that's why those herbivores, okay, the cows, the horse, okay, so they can, the rabbits, they can digest the dietary fiber, okay, and release the glucose inside the cellulose, okay. So for us, they are just like eating rice, okay. We uptake starch and then break it down to release glucose to obtain it, okay, and they feed on the dietary fiber, the grasses, and then they can digest the cellulose and also release the glucose. And then for the part 2 and part 3, or what is the role of the dietary fiber play in digestion, and then one common source, I think it will be a very easy idea. Although we cannot digest dietary fiber, it still has a very important role in our digestive system, okay, because it can stimulate peristalsis and also prevent constipation. It can prevent the feces from staying in the large intestine for a long time, okay, so that's why it can prevent constipation. And finally, one common source, okay, fruit, apple or banana, choy, some vegetables, something like this, okay. I think it's very easy for you guys to name some fruit. And then for part C, from the table, which part of the human intestine is more effective in food absorption, and name 2 structural features that enable it to be that effective. So you can see that for the small intestine and the large intestine, okay, you compare the number of the positive sign, okay, and then you will know that which part, okay, is more effective in food absorption and upper region of the small intestine. And the reason is that it has numerous villi, okay, to increase the surface area for food absorption, and also the villi, okay, also the small intestine is very long, so that's why the food can be kept in the small intestine for longer time for absorption, okay. And then for part D, what is the major site of the water absorption, and then what is the role of the colon? In this part, I would like to mention that what is the role of the colon? This question is different from what is the function of the colon, okay. Maybe most of you can recall that maybe from the book, okay. So for the large intestine or for the colon, oh, Mr. Learn, I remember what you say. Large intestine is responsible for absorbing remaining water of the feces. Oh yeah, I get the answer. Sorry, you're wrong, because you are just talking about the function of the colon, but not the role of the colon, okay, and then you know why. And then for part 3, what happens if the feces remains too long time in the cecum or the colon? That means in the large intestine, what will happen? Okay, so major site according to the table, small intestine. Compare the positive side and then you will know it. And then for the role, okay, not the function, is that the colon is responsible for regulating the water content in the feces. Although you know that the large intestine, it can absorb remaining water from the feces, the role is different. We need to put it in the daily life case, okay? So that's why the role is to regulate the water content. The colon will not absorb every single drop of water from the feces. You know that if the large intestine absorb every single drop of water from the feces, you will suffer from constipation. So that's why the large intestine, it will absorb a certain amount of water from the feces, and then that's all enough. Okay, I will not absorb it too much. Okay, something like this. So that's why it's a kind of regulation of water content. And then for the third part, okay, if the feces stay too long okay, and the feces will become so dry, and then you will suffer from constipation. So I think it's a bit easier, okay, for you to understand the whole concept of this question. It's talking about absorption and also talk about the egestion, about the feces. Okay, so if you have any questions, so you can leave it below. I will answer you as soon as possible. See you next time. Bye bye.